the second part of the program, I want to interview David about legal developments in Canada on the group Narconon. And I'll start off with Dave asking you the question here. Explain to our listeners what Narconon is and how did you get involved with it?
Sure. Narconon is the Scientology drug rehab. It's called Narconon. There's over 100 around the world in different countries and cities. And I ended up at Narconon as a patient for 5 months. And then I was on staff for 6 months as a course room supervisor, a graduate officer, a registrar, and in charge of forming a new foundation.
Do they use Scientology in that they're supposed to be a secular organization, but do they use any kind of Scientology ideas, methods?
Oh, absolutely. They throw that secular word around quite a bit, and it's not a secular program whatsoever. The secular part of it is that Scientology is getting their doctrine into the secular world, really is what it is. Every one of the 8 Narconon books were examined by a professor out of Alberta at a deposition, and he read all the books, and his statement was that there is nothing in the Narconon books that was not 100% Scientology. So when you get to Narconon, everything there is all Scientology training routines and Scientology auditing sessions, right from TRs right up to objectives, everything.
Tell us what's going on with Narconon in Canada right now. Scientology has entangled itself in a number of legal cases there. Tell us what's going on.
Sure. Well, after I left, I did file a complaint with the Human Rights Commission and the College of Physicians, Competition Bureau, and the Ministry of Health and Social Services. The Ministry of Health and Social Services did do a in-depth investigation, and I do have a report from them. They're not allowed to advertise their success rate anymore, but the ministry has invoked a certification process now, because every drug treatment center in Quebec has to be accredited now. Without accreditation, you can't operate. And the terms of which they have to be credited is very stringent, and it looks like Narconon is having quite a time obtaining those credentials. So with the Quebec Human Rights Commission, I filed a complaint with them for discrimination and also exploitation of a handicap. Any person in Canada or Quebec who has an alcohol or drug problem that's in a treatment center, it's classed as a disability. So once I filed my complaint with the Quebec Human Rights Commission it's going on just about 2 years now, there's been 5 more people file complaints too now. So the case is going on well. The last lady that was had a time with Narconon, she had her son in there, and she went through the fake referral sites. You can't tell it's Scientology or Narconon, and she was referred to Narconon for help for her son. Her son got there, and he had a lot of difficulties, and he ended up getting kicked out after a week, and they wouldn't give her money back. They just threw him on a bus and sent him home. So she went to CBC TV National News, and that show aired last Monday, and I went on with her. The speaker from the Narconon was also on there, and it was quite a show. It aired every hour right across Canada. But after the show, the legal person from Narconon released my confidential medical information and this young lad's information onto the internet. So we're dealing with that right now with the Human Rights Commission investigators and lawyers. So that's about it with that.
They actually took the private treatment information and just in retaliation to you for revenge, because you filed some lawful complaints, they are seeking some kind of just vindictive actions by publishing all that stuff on the internet. It sounds to me like in the United States, if anybody were to do that, that'd be very illegal. They could go to prison.
Well, yeah, and what we're trying to do right now, Tom, is we're seeking a restraining order to have it all removed. I contacted their lawyers before, over 2 years ago, to have all the stuff removed. I rescinded my authorization for them to use any of my material for their promotion. And they took it all down. But now, as of earlier this week, it's all back up again.
Sounds like they're not very good at keeping their word.
No, that's right.
What is Narconon's advertised success rate?
Anywhere between 70 and 90% you'll see on the websites around the globe. That's what they advertise as a success rate. Narconon trois-rivieres was advertising their success rate as 70 to 76. Now, as a graduate officer, it was my duty to confirm those stats. And when I looked at all the documents and computer screens, it was quite clear that the success rate was well below 46%. And when I calculated in the staff members that were recruited after they graduated and were using it, fell down below 20%.
So less than a 20% success rate, but they're claiming 70 to 90.
That's right, yes. Yeah. And so the Competition Bureau of Canada will be looking into this. It's pretty serious stuff.
Yeah, I mean, besides material misrepresentation, one could also view that as fraud in the inducement.
Fraud, that's right. Fraud and conspiracy to commit fraud, too.
You already mentioned that Scientology, or Narconon / Scientology, retaliated against you in Canada for your complaints, your lawful complaints. Are you aware that have they retaliated against anybody else?
Yes. You know, one other victim, he was harassed on his Facebook wall. He filed a complaint with the commission. I filed a complaint with the commission for reprisals, because once you file a formal complaint with the Human Rights Commission, it is illegal for them to intimidate or harass. And they even went after my friends and intimidated potential government witnesses. They basically threatened, if you keep talking to David or keep him as a friend on Facebook, we're cutting you off. So, I mean, they really did a number. You know, I've been followed. I've had people at my door, and so the Quebec Human Rights Commission did send a letter to their lawyer, you know, basically tell them to stop it or they would take action.
How much does Narconon charge its patients? Now, you were a patient yourself before,
yes.
but is it the same for everybody, or does it vary? Give us more details.
Well, when I was there, the fee was $23,000. It's $30,000 now. It's risen up to $30,000, and that can be anywhere from, say, 2.5 months to, say, 5 or 6 month program. There's no set time. Okay, it takes as long as it takes you to get through the program, and it depends how many times they shelf your file because you're not cooperating with the Scientology procedures.
Shelf your file. What does that mean?
That means stop your program, and so that you can't move on the program unless you cooperate with what they want you to do, as in writing success stories, doing the training routines, and auditing sessions. Okay, even if you don't believe something, you still are forced to do it, or else your program is stopped. You just sit there and basically rot away.
What are the steps of the program?
Oh, okay. Well, you've got the book one. It's basically training routines where you sit and face another patient called twin. You've got to sit there up to 2 hours, eyes closed, facing your twin, and then 2 hours, eyes open. And then eventually you move on into the sauna. The sauna program is 7 days a week, 4.5 hours in sauna at a high temperature, taking from up to 5,000 milligrams of niacin. Most people go up to 2,600. And what this does, though, is it affects a lot of people's livers who are there, because people that have been drug addicts or alcoholics especially, they have compromised livers already. And niacin is extremely toxic to the liver. So people were taken away to the hospital on several occasions. They were very, very sick going through the sauna program. Then you move on to book 3. They teach you how to word clear and learning, and it's all Scientology, A to Z. Then you go into auditing sessions and objectives, and nobody there as a patient understands what the heck is going on, but you just keep going along, and it's just a slow, gradual indoctrination into their religious doctrines.
Explain to our listeners what the training routines are. Exactly what are the steps? What goes on there in the training routines?
Like I said, you face your twin and just sit absolutely still. If you twitch or move in any which way or form, they will flunk you and you have to start all over again. And then there's a bull baiting part of that where you will have your say things to your twin to have him move or twitch or react in some way. And that can be quite intrusive and degrading, because they'll say things such as, your mother's a whore, your wife is sleeping with somebody while you're here, and you want to get them to react. Okay, it's not very nice. And then you go on to some of the routines are you have two walls 8 feet apart, and then you will command your twin, look at that wall. He'll look at the wall. You say thank you. Walk over to that wall. They walk over to the wall. You say thank you. You say touch that wall. They touch the wall, and you say thank you. Okay, turn around, and you go back and forth for days doing that. It's just a very mind control, breaking you down, cracking you.
Sounds like a method of behavior modification treatment.
Absolutely. Because
they're flunking you if you twitch or move or anything like that. They're penalizing or rewarding your behavior, and you get a pass if you stay perfectly still like a statue.
Absolutely. They're training you how to be controlled, and at the same time, they're training you how to control others.
These same training routines are used in Scientology as well?
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's the whole thing, not just physically, but it's psychologically dangerous, And because of that, I filed a formal complaint with the Quebec College of Physicians quite some time ago. They did an 8-month investigation. They went to the physician's office, went through his files, they went through all my files, and on let's see, where was it? On July 27th, 2011, they came down with a decision. The Narconon medical manager and physician that looked after Narconon's patient is also a Scientologist. Okay, and the college said, as a result, we concluded that Dr. Labonte had been in breach of several of his ethical obligations by associating himself with the Drug Detoxification Center, administering treatment not scientifically recognized in the current medical literature, and by conducting an incompetent medical assessment, and by keeping records of mediocre quality. So, and because of that, by way of written accord, he's agreed never to associate himself with Narconon ever again.
You mentioned after the training routines that you did sauna. Is that sauna procedure, is that used in Scientology as well?
Oh, absolutely. It's called the purification rundown. In Narconon, it's called clear mind, clean body. But it's the exact same thing. They're twins.
I just wonder how they can call one thing secular when they're doing the same thing, except they have a different public. They're specifically targeting, in the case of Narconon, people who are chemically dependent, who are addicted or are misusing a mind-altering substance.
Right.
But in the other case, they're not. But it's
right.
The same stuff.
Absolutely. Like, once again, they call it a secular program, but it's not. What they're doing is they're getting their technology into the secular community, i.e. the patients that are there. Okay, that's the way it works.
This is Rafael. You want to say something?
Yeah, I would like to ask some questions and add a comment to that. How it is possible to have this dual presentation, secular and religious at the same time. Basically, is the trademarks, all the trademarks, L. Ron Hubbard, all the readings, all the work is protected by the Church of Scientology International Corporation. It's not a religious organization, it's a non-profit corporation who actually lends the branding, lends the trademarks to the church, and obviously it has all the rights to publish as secular as well. Yeah, because if you see the trademarks, L. Ron Hubbard, one of the trademarks on the United States and Mexico is for giving mental ability to the people and indoctrinating philosophies and education. Not religious, but that's the trademark. So that's why they're able to do that, presenting the same product with two fronts, secular and religious.
It's interesting that the last time one of the newspapers interviewed the Narconon director, Mark Bernard, he admitted right to the newspaper, and it's published that indeed they do use the disconnection doctrine at Narconon. And the disconnection is if you're in an ethics interview and they deem that you're connected to a suppressive person on the outside, meaning somebody that speaks against the Church and Scientology or doesn't agree, then they may put, if you can't handle a situation, they will encourage you to disconnect from a family member, a wife, whatever. And then just last week, Andre Ahern, the legal spokesman for Narconon, said on CBC National News that yes, we do teach Scientology at Narconon.
Well, there it is. What is the legal status of Scientology in Canada?
They're not recognized as a religious organization federally. Many years ago, they were convicted in court, so they're a convicted criminal organization in Canada. But no, they're not recognized as a religion in Canada. They do not have charitable status.
Weren't they convicted of at least one felony?
Yes, a breach of public trust in Canada here. There were several convicted. That was following the Operation Snow White in the United States, where I think it was 6 members went to prison for a few years, federal prison. And because of the information and evidence that it was in that FBI investigation, Canadian authorities were able to investigate and also lay charges.
So in Canada, Scientology is a convicted felon?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we don't call it felon up here, but yes.
What do you call it in Canada?
Well, they're either convicted of a summary offense or convicted of an indictable offense, and one is quite less than the other.
Fair enough. Now, you mentioned how much Narconon charges its patients for their program, their therapy program. That $30,000, where does that money go?
Well, a lot of it gets funneled up to the Church of Scientology. 10% goes to the registrar or FSM out in the field. 10% goes to ABLE.
No, FSM, that's what, field staff member? They're essentially a recruiter out in the public?
Yes. Now, every patient that finishes the Narconon program is encouraged to take the FSM course so that when they leave, they can pyramid more people back in.
So the FSM course is a course in how to recruit people into Narconon or into Scientology.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, the FSM term, the field staff member term, that's also used in Scientology, correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then they will send in, we had several $100,000 in the Narconon building fund, and then they would send in what they called missions from Narconon International in California that would fly people up. And then Narconon Canada would come in with a team of 4, and then ABLE would be there. And we had all 3 of them there at the same time with the Narconon staff. And they charge, hundreds of dollars a day each per person, plus expenses and everything. So it bled the Narconon account down quite a bit. And so they're all executives that are there on these missions. And they take, I witnessed one of them taking and then buying $10,000 blocks of Scientology auditing processes. So that's one way it gets back up into the church too.
So that's how the money is extracted from Narconon by these so-called missions, where they charge huge amounts of money, and they pay these guys, though the missionaires, the people on the mission, they pay them, $50 a week, and they get some minimal food allowance or something like that. I mean, they can rake in out of one of these missions thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah, because Narconon was paying them approximately $350 a day each.
Wow.
That's a lot. Some of them were living right at Narconon trois-rivieres. They had beds up in their offices and whatnot. So Narconon Canada is dissolved now. After I left, there was quite a flap, to say the least. In fact, one of the executives, Narconon Canada, resigned and moved out of the province. And then the whole Narconon Canada was dissolved.
So there's still Narconon. The facility you were at was Narconon trois-rivieres.
That's correct. And there's one more tiny Narconon in Alberta. It's 4 to 6 people. That's all it'll take. It's just a house.
But Narconon Canada, was that like a holding company above those 2 Narconons?
It was a separate corporate entity, and its function was to oversee the Narconons in Canada, plus for expansion, opening up more Narconons.
So now that the corporation was dissolved by somebody in Scientology, presumably?
Yes, exactly.
All right. Have you observed any harm caused to any of the patients or even staff at Narconon by the Narconon program?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. One incident, which has been confirmed by two ex-staff members, in writing to me, one young fella went into Narconon and he had his medications taken away from him. He jumped out of the second store window trying to commit suicide. Another ex-patient who had a baby with the legal liaison staff member at Narconon, he had some mental issues that needed taking care of. The Scientology doesn't believe in psychiatrists or anything like that. But anyway, he had quite a time. He had done the program a couple times. He did go to the staff apartment complex down the road from Narconon, where there was a lot of drinking and a lot of drugs. And then one evening, there was a party raging, and there was a gun passed over the balcony, and the young fellow shot himself in the head and died. I mean, it's really bad. One person was in the sauna. They didn't give him his insulin. He was in the rest of the hospital. The hospital basically saved his life because he went into a coma for 3 days. I mean, I could go on and on. I mean, this is absurd. One young lady was sexually abused in withdrawal, and they basically did a Jan Eastgate on that young lady, counseled her not to file a report with the police or the social services. They even had pictures of her that they had to delete off a digital camera.
You mentioned Jan Eastgate. I assume you're talking about Jan Eastgate Meyer. Could you, for the edification of our listeners, could you summarize what her situation is?
Absolutely. Jan Eastgate was the head of the Scientology human rights group that stay there for human rights. Well, there was a young lady who was sexually abused, and Jan Eastgate, I think she's the president of the group.
This was in Australia, correct?
Yes, that's right, yeah. She counseled the young lady not to report it or file anything with the authorities. So she was arrested, I think it was last year, for that, and I guess the case is still pending on that. I haven't been following it recently.
Well, there's going to be a trial. To my understanding, there's going to be a trial in May, I believe.
Okay, I think it's a charge of obstruction of justice or counseling somebody to...
perversion of justice, maybe?
Yes, yeah, something like that, that's right. It's a pretty serious charge, very, very serious. I mean, but the human rights abuses by Scientology, they're well known for what they do.
In Narconon, you've seen similar abuses to what we've heard about with Jan Eastgate Meyer. And so are there any criminal charges pending against Scientology in Canada? Or is there still being investigation being done? What's
Pending. It's pending. I did have a meeting with two SQ intelligence officers. They're the same force that looks after the Prime Minister of Canada. They were concerned for my safety, so we had a 2-hour meeting. They investigated some things to make sure that there was no impending threat of death at the rest of the patients that were in Narconon. And we did have the trois-rivieres police do an investigation into illegal detainment, forcefully holding patients there. There is some other investigations ongoing that I can't discuss right now.
And by SQ, you mean like Security Quebec?
Yes, but they're not doing this next investigation. It's in depth.
Okay, fair enough.
I did go to the Senator Céline Piette's office in Ottawa. I did talk to her the last time I was there. I delivered probably about 1,300 pages of documents to her. And so she's spoken out, and she's trying to do something about this too.
Very good. Well, gentlemen, we're starting to run out of time here. Either you want to say anything, summarize, or make any comments? Rafael?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you very much, Thomas, for this opportunity to speak. I would like to summarize that even though Scientology Church is actually today flagging all the human rights with events all over the world, they are the ones who are actually violating every single human right and constitutional rights from people, from their own members and from their own staff and the CR members, and they just can't even stop. So it's very good that people like David and people like Cesar and other kind of people talking all over the world including Debbie Cook, who's actually on a trial right now. She will be on a trial in May, just for sending one email. So it's actually very good that people is speaking out. And Thomas, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you both for being guests on The Edge today.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you very much.
I'm Tom Smith, the producer and host of The Edge. We'll be back again next week with another interesting guest. Thanks for listening.